Let's read chapter 8 today. It's called Easter. Even though it was nearly Easter, there were still very few nights that it was warm enough to leave Miss Bessie out. And then there was the rain. All March it poured rain. For the first time in many years, the creek bed held water, not just a trickle, enough so that when you swung across, it was a little scary with all the rushing water below. Jess took Prince Terrian across inside his jacket, but the puppy was growing so fast he might pop the zipper any time and fall into the water and drown. Ellie and Brenda were already fighting about what they were going to wear to church. Since Mama got mad at the preacher 3 years back, Easter was the only time in the year that they went to church, and it was a big deal. His mother always cried poor, but she put a lot of thought and as much money as she could scrape together to make sure the family looked good. But the day before she planned to take them all over to Millburg Plaza for new clothes, his dad came home from Washington. He'd been laid off, no work, no new clothes this year. A wail went up from Ellie and Brenda like two sirens going to a fire. "You can't make me to go to church. I don't have anything to wear." "Just 'cause you're too fat," Maybelle muttered. "Did you hear what she said, Mama? I'm going to kill that kid." "Brenda, shut your mouth. We got a lot more clothes than Easter to worry. We got a lot more than Easter clothes to worry about." His dad got up noisily and poured himself a cup of coffee. "Why can't we charge some things?" Ellie said. Brenda burst in. "Do you know what some people do? They charge something and wear it, then they take it back, and the stores don't give them any trouble." Her father turned in a kind of roar. "I've never heard of such a thing in my life. Didn't you hear your mother tell you to be quiet, girl?" Brenda stopped talking. Jess was glad to escape to the shed with the company of Miss Bessie. There was a knock. "Jess?" "Leslie, come on in." She looked first and sat on the floor. "What's new?" "Oh, don't ask," he said. "Things are bad, huh?" "Yeah, my dad just got laid off, and Ellie and Brenda are fit to be tied because they can't have any new clothes for Easter." "I'm sorry. I mean about your dad." Jess grinned. I'm not too worried about the girls. If I know them, they'll trick new clothes out of somebody." "It would make you throw up to see how those girls make a spectacle of themselves in church." "I never knew you went to church." "Just on Easter," he said. She didn't say anything. "Maybe I'd like to go." "I don't understand you sometimes, Leslie," he said. "Well, I've never been to church before." "Well, you'd hate it." "Why?" "Well, it's boring." "Well, I want to see for myself. Do you think your parents would let me go with you? You can't wear pants." "I've got some dresses, Jessie Aarons. Would wonders never cease?" "Here," he said, "open your mouth." "Why?" "Just open your mouth." For once she obeyed, and he sent a stream of warm milk from Miss Bessie straight in. "Jessie Aarons," she said. "Don't open your mouth now. You're wasting good milk." She started to giggle, choke, and cough. "Now, if I could just learn to pitch a baseball that straight. Let me try again." Leslie controlled her giggle, closed her eyes, and solemnly opened her mouth. But now Jess was giggling, so he couldn't keep his hand steady. "You got it right in my ear," she said, and she started laughing. "I'd be obliged if you finished milking and come back to the house." His dad was standing right at the door. "I guess I better go," said Leslie. She got up and went to the door. "Excuse me." His dad moved aside to let her pass. Jess waited for him to say something more, but he just stood there and then went out. There's a picture of Miss Bessie. Ellie said she would go to church if Mama would let her wear a see-through blouse, and Brenda would go if at least she got a new skirt. And in the end, everyone got something new except Jess and Dad. Neither of them really cared. "Since I haven't got anything new, could Leslie go to church with us?" "That girl? No, she doesn't dress right." "Mama," his voice was sounding like Ellie's. "She has a dress, hundreds of them." His mom's thin face dropped. "I don't want no one poking fun at our family." Jesse wanted to put his arm around her the way he put it around Maybelle when she needed comfort. She doesn't poke her nose up at you, Mama, honest." "Well, if she'll look decent, she can come." Leslie looked decent. Her hair was kind of slicked down, and she wore a navy blue jumper over a blouse with tiny old-fashioned looking flowers. At the bottom of her red knee socks were a pair of shiny brown leather shoes that Jess had never seen Leslie wear before. Her manner was decent. Her usual sparkle was toned down, and she said yes, and no, ma'am, to the mom, just as though she were Mrs. Aaron, just as though she were aware of Miss Aaron's dread of disrespect. Jess knew how hard Leslie must be trying, for Leslie didn't say ma'am naturally. In comparison to Leslie, Brenda and Ellie looked like a pair of peacocks with fake tail feathers. They both insisted on riding in the front of the pickup with their parents, which was some kind of squeeze with Brenda's shape to consider. Jess and Leslie and the little girls climbed into the back. The sun wasn't exactly shining, but it was the first day in so long that it wasn't raining. What a morning! What lovely meadows! The wind carried their voices away from them. It made the music seem mysterious, which filled Jess with a feeling of power over the hills rolling behind the truck. The ride was too short, especially for Joyce Ann. She really loved singing, even though they were singing Christmas songs, not Easter. Jess tickled her to get her giggling again, so that when the four of them clambered down over the tailgate, they were flush-faced and happy once more. They were a little late, which didn't bother Ellie and Brenda, for it meant they got to flounce down the entire length of the aisle to the first pew, making sure everyone saw them in church, and every expression of every jealous one. Man, they were disgusting. And his mother had been scared Leslie might embarrass her. Jess hunched his shoulders and slunk into the pew before his dad. Church always seemed the same. Jesse could turn it out the same way he tuned out school, and his body standing up and sitting down, but he was just daydreaming. Once or twice he was aware of being on his feet with the loud, not really tuneful singing all around him. He could hear Leslie singing. The preacher had one of those tricky voices. It would buzz along for several minutes comfortably, then bang, he was screaming at you. Each time Jess would jump, it would take another couple minutes to relax again, because he wasn't really listening to the words. He was just watching. It took a while to get Ellie and Brenda pulled away from the front yard of the church. Jess and Leslie went ahead and put the little girls in the back to wait to settle down. I'm really glad I came. Jessie turned to Leslie in disbelief. It was better than a movie. You're kidding. No, I'm not. And she wasn't. The whole thing is really interesting, isn't it? What do you mean? All those people, I just don't think I understand it. Isn't it beautiful? Maybelle broke in. It's a little scary. They were talking about Jesus nailing holes right through somebody's hand. Maybe Maybelle's right. It's because we're all vile sinners. God made Jesus die. Do you think that's true? He was shocked. It's in the Bible, Leslie. She looked at him as if she were going to argue. It's crazy, isn't it? You have to believe it, but you hate it. I don't have to believe it, and I think it's beautiful. She shook her head. It's crazy. Maybelle had her eyes all squinted, as though Leslie was some strange creature in the zoo. You gotta believe the Bible, Leslie. Why? It was a genuine question. Leslie wasn't being a smarty. Because if you don't believe the Bible, then you'll go to hell and die. Where'd you ever hear such a thing like that? Leslie turned to Jess. He felt hot and caught by her words. He dropped his gaze and began to fiddle. That's not right, Jess. You don't go to hell if you don't believe in the Bible. Jess pushed his hair out of his face, I reckon. I don't even think you've read the Bible, said Leslie. I read most of it, said Jess. It's about the only book we got in our place. He looked up and Leslie half grinned. Okay, but I still don't think God goes around damning people to hell. They smiled at each other to ignore Maybelle's anxious little voice. But Leslie, what if you die? What'll happen when you die? I guess we'll see. The next chapter is chapter 9. We'll read that later.